years old. His empire really was crumbling. His designer suits were gone, replaced by off-the-rack clothing that didn't fit quite right. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt and drawn. He looked like a man with nothing left to lose. "No," she said quietly. "Let him come." "Are you sure? He could be dangerous." But that was the thing. Jiwon wasn't dangerous, not anymore. And maybe he never had been, not really. He'd been cruel, yes, arrogant and dismissive and everything she'd hated. But dangerous? No. He was just a broken man who destroyed the best thing in his life and was finally realizing it. Because here's what Jiwon didn't understand. Destiny wasn't trying to destroy him anymore. She already had. The final piece of her plan had fallen into place the previous week. She'd acquired Daehan Shipping, the company that handled 80% of Jiwon's imports. Without it, his entire operation would collapse within days. He wouldn't be able to bring in product, couldn't fulfill obligations to his partners, would lose every territory he still controlled. It was over. She'd won. But sitting in her corner office, looking out at the city she'd conquered, she felt empty, hollow, like she'd been running a race for 5 years and had finally crossed the finish line, only to realize there was nothing waiting on the other side. Her phone buzzed. A text from Hyunwoo. "Dinner tonight? My wife wants to meet the woman I won't shut up about. She's convinced you're secretly a genius." Destiny smiled despite her mood. "Would love to. 7 p.m.? Perfect. And Destiny? Stop letting that bastard live rent-free in your head. You won. Enjoy it." But that was the problem. She didn't feel like she'd won. She felt tired, worn out, like she'd spent 5 years climbing a mountain only to discover the view from the top was just more mountains. That evening, as Destiny was leaving the building, she found Jiwon waiting by her car in the underground parking garage. She should have been alarmed. They were alone, isolated, nobody around to witness whatever might happen. But she felt no fear, just exhaustion. "I'm not here to beg," he said, before she could call security through the app on her phone. I wanted you to know something. I'm not interested in anything you have to say. I went to therapy." He laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound. "After you disappeared, I started having panic attacks. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. My mother, before she died last year, made me see someone, a psychiatrist who specializes in personality disorders." Despite herself, Destiny paused, her hand on her car door handle. And I realized I'm everything my father was. Cruel, obsessed with status and power, incapable of seeing people's value beyond their usefulness to me. He looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Genuine self-awareness, painful and raw. "You were the only real thing in my life, and I destroyed it because I was too broken to recognize love when it was right in front of me." "That's very insightful. Good for you. Doesn't change anything." "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness or another chance. I know I don't deserve either of those things." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and set it on the hood of her car, right next to where her hand rested. "I just wanted to say that watching you build this empire, seeing you thrive and succeed and become exactly what you were always meant to be." His voice caught, thick with emotion. "I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry I made you think you needed to prove anything to anyone." You were always enough, Destiny. More than enough. I was just too blind and stupid and damaged to see it. He walked away before she could respond, his footsteps echoing in the concrete garage, fading into silence. Destiny stood there for a long moment, staring at the envelope. She should throw it away, leave it on the hood of her car, and drive off without a second thought. Instead, she picked it up. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a handwritten letter on expensive stationery, the kind Jiwon had always preferred. His handwriting was messy, shaky, not the precise script she remembered. Destiny. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve your time or your thoughts or even your hatred. Hatred requires caring, and you'd be smart to feel nothing for me at all. But I need you to know that losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Not because of what you've become, though watching you succeed has been both the most painful and most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed, but because of who you were. Kind, passionate, full of dreams and hope and ambition that I was too damaged to support. You saw good in me that didn't exist, and instead of trying to become worthy of that faith, I punished you for having it. I ruined the best thing in my life because I thought love was about control and status and power. I thought having someone beneath me would make me feel bigger. I know better now. Too late, but I know. The money in this envelope is everything I calculated you spent on me during our relationship. Dinners I never paid for. Gifts you gave me. The subway fares and taxi rides and little sacrifices you made because you thought we were building something together while I was just using you. It's not enough. Nothing could ever be enough to compensate for the pain I caused you. But it's a start. I'm leaving Seoul, stepping away from my father's organization, from this world that made me into a monster. I'm going to Singapore to start over, maybe become someone worthy of the woman you always were. Thank you for teaching me what strength really looks like. Thank you for showing me that true power isn't about making others feel small. It's about building yourself up without tearing anyone else down. I hope you find someone who sees what I was too broken to see. Someone who celebrates you instead of trying to diminish you. Someone who knows how incredibly lucky they are. You deserved better than me. You always did. Jiwon. Destiny stood in the parking garage, holding the letter with hands that trembled slightly, feeling emotions she'd locked away for 5 years trying to surface. She wasn't crying, but her eyes burned with unshed tears. She'd wanted this, hadn't she? Wanted him to understand what he'd lost, to feel remorse, to suffer the way she'd suffered. And here it was, genuine contrition, real self-awareness, actual growth. So why did she feel so hollow? She folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope with the check, and got in her car. Drove home to her penthouse apartment in silence, the Seoul lights blurring past her windows in streams of color. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on her balcony overlooking the city, drinking wine and thinking about the girl she'd been 5 years ago. The one who'd cried on a subway platform. The one who'd thought love was worth the humiliation. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd turned her pain into power. But was that woman happy? Destiny was in her office reviewing proposals for her next acquisition when Jennifer buzzed her, her voice strange and tentative. "Miss Monroe, there's a Park Jiwon here to see you. He says it's not about business." Destiny's hand stilled on her keyboard. "Send him in." Jiwon entered, and she barely recognized him. He'd lost more weight, but in a healthy way, like someone who'd been working out, taking care of themselves. His hair was longer, less perfectly styled, but somehow more authentic. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt instead of designer suits. And his eyes were clear, no longer hollow or desperate. He looked peaceful. "I'm leaving for Singapore tonight," he said without preamble, standing by the door as if afraid to come further into her space. "I wanted to say goodbye, and to give you this." He held out a folder, manila and worn. "What is it?" "Everything I have left. 3 buildings in Gangnam, 1 in Itaewon, and a commercial property in Bundang. I'm signing them over to you." Destiny stood, walking around her desk. "Jiwon, I don't want your properties. It's not charity. It's restitution." His smile was sad but genuine. "You own most of my former assets anyway through your acquisitions. Might as well have the rest. Besides, I won't need them where I'm going." "What are you going to do in Singapore?" "I'm starting a non-profit, working with at-risk youth, kids who are getting recruited into gangs and organized crime. Kids who are following the same path I did." He looked at her directly, and she saw no manipulation in his gaze, no hidden agenda, just honesty, trying to stop them from becoming what I became. That's good, Jiwon, really good. I had a good teacher." His smile grew slightly. "You showed me that you can rebuild yourself into something better. That past mistakes don't have to define your future. I never taught you that. You lived it. That was teaching enough." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of 5 years and all their history hanging between them. "Why are you doing this?" Destiny asked finally. "The therapy, the nonprofit, giving away everything you have left?" "Because you were right. I didn't love you back then. I didn't even know what love was. I thought it was possession, control, having someone who made me feel powerful." He looked away, out the window at the Seoul skyline. "But I'm learning. Therapy, meditation, actually dealing with my trauma instead of inflicting it on others. And part of that healing is making amends for the harm I caused. I don't need your amends. I know, but I need to give them. For me, not for you." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "For what it's worth, I hope you find someone who sees what I was too broken to see. Someone who celebrates you every day, who knows how lucky they are to have you. You deserve that, Destiny. You always did. I have people like that now. Real friends, real support. Good." His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way she'd never seen before. "That's really, really good." After he left, Destiny sat at her desk for a long time, looking at the folder he'd given her. Inside were property deeds worth tens of millions of won. More wealth to add to her portfolio. She could sell them, donate them, turn them into more investments. But as she sat there, an idea began to form. Something that had been growing in the back of her mind for months, taking shape in the quiet moments between deals and acquisitions. She picked up her phone and called Hyunwoo. How do you feel about expanding into community development? She asked instead of saying hello. I feel like you're about to pitch me something brilliant. Tell me more. What if we took these properties and turned them into something meaningful? Affordable housing for working families, youth centers with free education programs, job training facilities for people trying to rebuild their lives. There was a pause. Then Hyunwoo's voice, warm with approval. I love it. How soon can we start? As she outlined her vision, affordable housing that didn't sacrifice dignity, youth programs that actually served the community, education initiatives that gave people real opportunities. Destiny realized something profound. She'd won. Not because she'd destroyed Jiwon, not because she'd built wealth and power and an empire. She'd won because she'd built something beautiful from the ashes of her pain. Because she'd turned her suffering into something that could help others. Because she'd proven that the only person who could determine her worth was herself. And that was the best revenge of all. Not revenge at all, but redemption. Not just for herself, but for everyone her story could inspire. The grand opening of the Destiny Monroe Community Center was packed with press, politicians, community leaders, and the people who mattered most, the families who would use its services. The building, one of the properties Jiwon had given her, had been completely transformed. What had once been a luxury apartment complex catering to Seoul's wealthy elite was now a vibrant community hub with affordable housing units, job training facilities, a library, computer labs, youth recreation spaces, and a community kitchen. The renovation had cost $12 million. Destiny had funded half of it herself. Hyunwoo had matched her contribution. The rest had come from donors who believed in the vision. Destiny stood at the podium in the building's central courtyard, looking out at the crowd of 200 people. She wore a stunning emerald suit from a Korean designer, but she'd paired it with comfortable shoes because she'd learned that true power wasn't about suffering in heels. It was about being authentic. 5 years ago, she began, her voice steady and strong, carrying across the courtyard. Someone told me I'd never amount to anything, that I was too poor, too ordinary, too beneath him to deserve respect or love. The crowd murmured sympathetically. Some people pulled out their phones to record. This story had become somewhat famous in Seoul. The Black American woman who'd built an empire and then used it to give back. And you know what? That pain almost destroyed me. For days after that rejection, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't see any future for myself. She paused, letting that vulnerability show. But instead of letting it destroy me, I let it fuel me. Not to prove him wrong, though that was satisfying, but to prove to myself that my worth wasn't determined by anyone else's perception. A smattering of applause, which she gently waved down. This center exists because I know what it's like to feel worthless, to be told you don't belong, to believe that where you come from determines where you can go. She smiled, and it was genuine, reaching her eyes. I'm here to tell every young person listening, every person who's been told they're not enough. That's a lie. Your worth is inherent. Your potential is limitless. And the only person whose opinion of you matters is your own. The applause was thunderous, People stood, cheering. She saw mothers crying, teenagers looking inspired, community leaders nodding with approval. After the ceremony, as Destiny mingled with guests and answered questions from press, she saw a familiar face in the back of the crowd. Jiwon, wearing casual clothes and a baseball cap pulled low, smiled at her from a distance. He didn't approach, didn't try to speak to her. Just nodded once in acknowledgement, a gesture of respect, of genuine pride in what she'd accomplished. Then he turned and left, disappearing into the Seoul crowds. Was that him? Hyunwoo appeared at her elbow, following her gaze. The ex? Yeah. Want me to have him removed? I know people. Destiny laughed. No, let him go. And she meant it. Not just physically, but emotionally. She was finally letting go of the anger, the hurt, the need to make him understand what he'd lost. Because she'd won something better than revenge. She'd won herself back. And in doing so, she'd created something that would outlive both their egos and their history. A place where other people could find the support and opportunities she'd had to fight so hard to create for herself. Come on, Hyunwoo said, linking his arm through hers. Soo-young wants to introduce you to her sister. She's convinced you two would get along. Is she trying to set me up? Absolutely. She's been planning this for weeks. Destiny laughed as they walked through the community center she'd built, past families exploring their new homes, past teenagers checking out the computer labs, past mothers learning about the job training programs. This was her legacy, not the money in her bank account or the buildings with her name on them. This. The lives changed, the opportunities created, the hope restored. Destiny was reviewing proposals for expanding the community center network to Busan and Incheon when Jennifer buzzed her office. Ms. Monroe, you have a call on line 1. It's Kang Jiwon calling from Singapore. Destiny's hand hovered over the phone. She hadn't spoken to him since the center's opening 2 years ago, though she'd heard through mutual acquaintances that his nonprofit work was thriving, that he'd helped hundreds of at-risk youth in Singapore find alternatives to gang life. Curiosity won out. She picked up. This is Destiny Monroe. Destiny. His voice was warm, calm, nothing like the desperate or arrogant tones she remembered. I hope I'm not overstepping by calling. I saw the news about the centers expanding to Busan and Incheon. It's incredible what you're building. Thank you. What can I do for you, Jiwon? I wanted to contribute to the expansion, a significant donation if you'll accept it. She was quiet for a moment, genuinely surprised. That's generous. But why? Because what you're building matters. It's changing lives in ways that my work in Singapore is changing lives here. He paused. And because I owe you more than property deeds and apologies. I owe you action. I owe it to the universe to try to create as much good as I created harm. They talked for over an hour about the centers, about his nonprofit work in Singapore, about the changes they were both trying to create in the world, about the kids he was helping, the families finding new paths, the communities being strengthened. It wasn't romantic, wasn't even really friendly in the way old friends reconnect, but it was peaceful. Two people who'd once hurt each other, now working to heal others. You sound happy, Destiny said finally, realizing it was true. There was a lightness in his voice she'd never heard before. I'm getting there, Therapy helps. The work helps. Making amends helps. He paused. You? She looked around her office, at the photos on her walls of ribbon cuttings and community events, at the awards for philanthropy and business leadership, at the pictures of her with Hyun-woo and Soo-young and their kids, with the families from the centers, with the team she'd built. Yeah, she said softly, surprised to realize it was true. I really am. I'm glad. You deserve it. You always did. After they hung up, Destiny sat in the quiet of her office, marveling at how far she'd come. Not just financially, though the numbers in her bank account still sometimes shocked her. Not just professionally, though she was now recognized as one of Asia's top investors and philanthropists, but emotionally, spiritually, internally. The girl who'd cried on that subway platform was gone. In her place was a woman who'd turned her pain into power, her rejection into redemption, her heartbreak into hope for thousands of others. Jiwon had tried to make her feel worthless, had thrown her away like trash, had told her she'd never be enough. Instead, he'd awakened something in her that changed her life and countless others forever. She'd spent years building an empire to prove him wrong. Then she'd realized the real victory wasn't in proving him wrong. It was in proving herself right, in validating the worth she'd always had, but had temporarily forgotten. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, her brother. Mom wants to know when you're visiting Atlanta. Also, she saw the article about the new centers. She's showing it to everyone at church. You're famous, D. Destiny smiled. Tell her I'll come for Thanksgiving, and tell her to stop bragging about me to the church ladies. Never gonna happen. You know she's proud of you, right? We all are. I know. Love you. Love you too. Keep changing the world, sis. She set down her phone and turned to her computer, pulling up the proposal for the Busan Center. There was work to do, always more work to do. But for the first time in 5 years, she wasn't working to prove anything or escape anything or build walls against anything. She was working because she wanted to, because it mattered, because she could, and that made all the difference. Epilogue, 5 years after that. The Destiny Monroe Community Network now operated 23 centers across South Korea, with plans to expand into Japan and other Asian countries. Over 10,000 families had been served. Hundreds of young people had found paths away from gangs and crime. Thousands had received job training, education, and opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Destiny stood in her office, different from the one where Jiwon had begged 5 years earlier, in a new building, with an even better view, looking at the latest quarterly reports. Not bad for someone who used to count subway fare, she murmured to herself. What was that? Priya, her girlfriend of 2 years, poked her head into the office. She was a brilliant surgeon from Mumbai who'd moved to Seoul for a research position and had literally crashed into Destiny at a charity gala when someone had bumped her. They'd been inseparable since. Just thinking about how far I've come. Priya crossed the office and wrapped her arms around Destiny from behind, resting her chin on Destiny's shoulder. You're amazing. You know that, right? You might have mentioned it once or twice. Well, I'll keep mentioning it until you believe it completely. Destiny turned in Priya's arms, kissing her softly. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Easy, supportive, celebrating rather than diminishing. "Dinner tonight?" Priya asked. "That new restaurant in Itaewon?" "Can't. Board meeting for the foundation. But tomorrow? It's a date." Another kiss. "Don't work too late. You need sleep." After Priya left, Destiny returned to her desk, but her mind wandered to the journey that had brought her here. She'd heard through the grapevine that Jiwon was still in Singapore, still running his non-profit, still helping kids, that he'd gotten married to a social worker he'd met through his work, that he was happy, or at least content. She didn't think about him often anymore, didn't need to. That chapter of her life was fully closed, not with bitterness, but with peace. She'd won, not by destroying him, though she'd had that power. Not by making him suffer, though she'd had that opportunity. She'd won by building something beautiful, by turning her pain into purpose, by proving that the only opinion of her that mattered was her own, and by learning that true strength wasn't about making others feel small, it was about lifting others up while you rose. Her phone buzzed. An email from a young woman in Busan who'd gone through the job training program at one of the centers. She'd just landed her first real job, was moving into her first apartment, was building a life she'd never thought possible. "Thank you for believing in people like me." The email ended. "You changed my life." Destiny smiled, saving the email in a folder she kept for moments when she needed reminding of why she did this work. This was what winning looked like. Not revenge, not wealth, not power over others, but the ability to change lives, to create opportunities, to give people the support and belief she'd had to fight so hard to find for herself. Jiwon had kicked her when she was down, had tried to keep her there. But she'd risen, and in rising, she'd pulled thousands of others up with her, and that was a victory worth more than any revenge could ever be. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you so much for being here with me. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more Afro-Korean romance stories, and comment below telling me what you thought about Destiny's journey. What did you think of her transformation, of Jiwon's redemption arc? Should we do more stories about powerful comebacks and women building empires? Let me know what you want to see next. And remember, your worth is not determined by anyone else's opinion of you. You are enough, exactly as you are. The right people will see that. The wrong people, they're just clearing space for the right ones to arrive. Until next time, keep believing in your power to rise from any situation, to turn your pain into purpose, and to build something beautiful from even the most broken pieces. See you in the next video.